Welcome back to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. These stories were never meant to soothe you. They were whispered by firelight, carved into stone, and remembered because someone didn't survive them. Here, myths are not cleaned, corrected, or made gentle. They are warnings. They are bargains paid in blood. And they exist to remind you of a simple truth the living often forget. Wit can be deadlier than strength, and curiosity always collects its debt. Tonight's story is not simply an adventure. It is a slow punishment measured in years. This is the story of Odysseus, a man who survived monsters, defied gods, and learned, far too late, that getting home is often harder than winning a war. When Troy finally fell, the war did not end cleanly. It collapsed inward, leaving ash, screams, and survivors who would never sleep properly again. Odysseus walked away from the ruins as a hero, praised for his mind more than his sword. The wooden horse had worked, the city had burned, the enemy was gone. By every measure that mattered to men, he had won. The gods disagreed. Odysseus set sail for home, believing intelligence could solve anything. That belief would cost him 10 years. The first landfall should have been uneventful, but hunger makes animals of soldiers. His men raided, ignored warnings, and paid for it. Again and again, the pattern repeated. Odysseus planned carefully. His crew grew careless, and the world responded with violence. Leadership, he learned, does not mean control. It means responsibility for mistakes you did not personally make. Then came the Cyclops. On the island of the one-eyed giant, Odysseus chose cunning over mercy. He blinded the creature in its sleep and escaped by calling himself Nobody, tricking the Cyclops into screaming lies to his neighbors. It worked, but as the ship sailed away, pride demanded an audience. Odysseus shouted his real name across the water. That was the moment the sea turned against him. The Cyclops was the son of Poseidon, and gods do not forgive insults. From that point forward, the ocean itself became a weapon. Storms rising without warning, winds turning hostile, currents dragging ships into nowhere. Odysseus reached the island of the Windkeeper, who gave him safe passage sealed inside a bag. His crew, convinced it held treasure, opened it while he slept. The winds exploded outward, undoing weeks of careful navigation in a single moment. Clever plans mean nothing if trust collapses. Then came the dead. Odysseus descended into the underworld not as a conqueror, but as a guest among ghosts. There he spoke to fallen warriors, to prophets, to the shade of his own mother, who had died waiting for him. The dead told him the truth. The living would not. The journey would end, but it would strip him down to something smaller first. He sailed past the Sirens, creatures whose voices promised impossible knowledge. Odysseus ordered his men to seal their ears with wax, and had himself tied to the mast. He listened, screaming to be released, begging for destruction disguised as wisdom. His men obeyed his earlier command and ignored his later madness. Survival sometimes depends on being restrained from yourself. The price continued. Between Scylla and Charybdis, between a monster that ate sailors and a whirlpool that swallowed ships, Odysseus chose the path that would kill fewer men. He listened to screams as friends were pulled into the dark. Strategy is not clean. Leadership is not heroic. It is arithmetic done with lives. Eventually, exhausted and alone, Odysseus washed ashore on the island of a goddess who offered him everything: immortality, comfort, forgetting. Athena favored him, but even she could not hurry fate. Odysseus stayed for years, staring out at the sea, refusing paradise because it came without Ithaca, Home mattered more than perfection. When the gods finally allowed his return, they did not restore him as a king. They sent him back as a beggar. Ithaca had rotted in his absence. Suitors filled his halls, devouring his stores, mocking his wife, plotting his son's death. Power had replaced patience. Noise had replaced loyalty. Odysseus entered his own home unrecognized, watching men who believed he was a myth. He waited. Only when the moment was precise did he act. The bow that no one else could string bent easily in his hands. Arrows followed. Justice arrived without speeches. Blood pooled where arrogance had lived. And when it was over, Odysseus stood in silence. The victory felt hollow. The journey had taken too much. He had beaten Troy. He had outwitted monsters. He had endured the gods. But the hardest truth remained. Survival is not the same as triumph. Coming home does not mean returning unchanged. Odysseus learned what the sea teaches everyone eventually. Cleverness can save you, but humility is what lets you rest. Odysseus reached Ithaca, but the man who arrived was not the one who left. And that may be the quiet warning buried in this myth. The world will test you until pride breaks, until intelligence humbles itself, until survival costs something you cannot get back. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient darkness, subscribe to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. New stories arrive every week. Old myths, sharpened truths, and lessons the night still remembers. Sleep carefully, and never underestimate the sea.